You walk into the dealership thinking, I just need something reliable to get me to work. The salesman shows you a nice Honda Accord. $35,000 seems reasonable. Everyone's got one. You crunch the numbers, $600 a month for the car payment. You can swing that. So you sign the papers, drive off the lot feeling responsible and adult-like, and then 12 months later, you're sitting there wondering why you're always broke despite making decent money. Here's the thing. That $600 monthly payment, that's not even half of what that car is actually costing you every single year. And I'm not talking about some theoretical calculation. I mean real dollars leaving your bank account that you probably aren't even tracking. My name's Rayhan, and I spend way too much time thinking about the hidden costs that destroy people's wealth building potential. If you're someone who's ever looked at your bank account and thought, where did all my money go, despite not buying anything crazy, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Because today, we're going to break down the true cost of owning what everyone considers a normal car. And I promise you, the number is going to shock you. Look, here's what most people don't realize. Dealerships have spent decades perfecting the art of making you focus on one number and one number only, that monthly payment. They don't want you thinking about the total cost. They don't want you adding up all the other expenses. They want you walking out of there thinking, I can afford $600 a month, without ever stopping to calculate what you're actually spending. And we fall for it every single time. According to AAA's 2024 data, the average American spends over $12,000 per year. That's right, per year, to own and operate a new vehicle. But here's where it gets really interesting. Most people, if you ask them to estimate their car costs, would guess maybe $8,000 or $9,000 at most. They're off by 30 to 40%. That's not a rounding error. That's a fundamental misunderstanding of where your money is going. Let me walk you through this with a real example, because I think when you see the actual math, it's going to click in a way that abstract numbers never do. Let's say you buy that Honda Accord I mentioned. $35,000 purchase price. You put down $3,000 because that's what the internet told you was responsible. You finance $32,000 at 7% interest, which is actually pretty good in today's market, over 72 months. That's 6 years, by the way, which should tell you something right there, but we'll get to that. Your monthly payment comes out to $548. Not bad, right? That's less than the $600 we were talking about. Over a year, that's $6,576 in car payments. Now, you might be thinking, okay, Rayhan, so it's $6,600 a year. That's not $12,000. What are you talking about? This is where everyone gets it wrong. That payment, that's just the beginning. Let's talk insurance. According to Bankrate, the average cost for full coverage car insurance in the United States is about $2,150 per year. That's the average. If you're under 25, if you live in a major city, if you've had any accidents or tickets, you're paying way more than that. I've seen people paying $3,000, $4,000 a year for insurance on a regular sedan. But let's be conservative. Let's use that $2,150 number. So now we're at $6,576 in payments plus $2,150 in insurance. That's $8,726. And we're not even close to done. Here's the thing about gas. It feels like a small expense because you're paying for it in $60 or $70 increments. Your brain doesn't add it up, but it should. The average American drives about 13,500 miles per year, according to the Department of Transportation. That Honda Accord gets about 30 miles per gallon combined, so you're using 450 gallons of gas per year. At $3.50 per gallon, and if you live in California or anywhere on the coasts, it's higher than that, you're spending $1,575 per year on gas. $8,726 plus $1,575. We're now at $10,301. Look, I know what you're thinking. Okay, but that's still not $12,000. I'm getting there. Stay with me. This is where people really delude themselves. They think, oh, I'll just change the oil a couple times a year. No big deal. AAA estimates that maintenance costs for a medium sedan run about $1,186 per year. And that's assuming nothing goes wrong. That's just routine stuff. Oil changes, tire rotations, air filters, eventually new tires, eventually brake pads, eventually new wiper blades, cabin air filters, transmission fluid, coolant flushes. It adds up so much faster than you think. I had a friend who bought a 3-year-old Toyota Camry. Famously reliable, right? In year one of ownership, she spent $1,800 on maintenance, new tires because the previous owner had run them into the ground, brake pads, a battery that died. Nothing catastrophic, just normal wear and tear, but $1,800. Let's stick with AAA's conservative estimate, $1,186 per year. We're now at $11,487. Every single year, you've got to register your car. Depending on your state, this can range from $50 to over $500. The national average is around $120, but many states charge based on the value of your vehicle, so that new Accord might cost you $200 to $300 per year in registration fees. Let's say $150 per year to be reasonable. $11,487 plus $150. We're at $11,637. Now here's where it gets really interesting, and this is the part that nobody talks about because it doesn't feel like a cost. You're not writing a check for it, but it's the single biggest expense of owning a car, and most people are completely blind to it: depreciation. That $35,000 Honda Accord you just bought, the second you drove it off the lot, it became a $31,500 car. You lost $3,500 in 30 seconds. That's not an exaggeration. According to Carfax and Kelley Blue Book data, new cars lose about 10% of their value the moment they leave the dealership, and then another 10% or so in the first year. By the end of year one, that car is worth about $28,000. You've lost $7,000 in value. Now, you might say, but Rayhan, I'm not selling the car, so why does that matter? It matters because that $7,000 is real money that you could have kept. It's real purchasing power that evaporated. If you had invested that $35,000 in an index fund, I know you need a car, we'll get to alternatives in a minute, but if you had invested it at the market's historical 10% returns, you'd have $3,500 gained, not lost $7,000. That's a $10,500 difference in wealth in just 1 year. But even if we're talking about cash-based thinking, that $7,000 in depreciation is part of the cost of owning that car for a year. Some people argue you shouldn't count depreciation because you're gonna sell it eventually and get some money back. Sure, but you're never getting back what you paid. The difference between what you paid and what you'll eventually sell it for, that's a cost, spread out over the years you own it. For our purposes, let's average it out. If you keep the car for 6 years and it depreciates by $18,000 over that time, which is conservative, that's $3,000 per year in depreciation. $11,637 plus $3,000. We're at $14,637. That's what that normal car actually costs you. Not $600 a month, not $7,200 a year, $14,637. Over $1,200 per month. And that's assuming nothing goes wrong. That's assuming you don't get into an accident. That's assuming you don't need a major repair. That's assuming you don't get any parking tickets or toll violations. Here's what drives me crazy, and I mean this in the most constructive way possible because I was guilty of this too. We as a society have normalized financial decisions that are absolutely destroying our ability to build wealth. When I say you're spending $14,637 per year on a car, most people's first reaction isn't, oh my God, I need to change this. It's, well, yeah, but everyone needs a car. And that's the trap. That's the psychological shift that the car industry has successfully embedded in our brains. They've made it so that questioning whether you need a $35,000 new car feels almost un-American, like you're being cheap or irresponsible. But let's do some math that actually makes sense. $14,637 per year for 6 years is $87,822. If instead of spending that money on a car, you invested it in a simple index fund, averaging 10% returns, which is what the S&P 500 has historically done, you'd have $114,000 after 6 years. That's not theory. That's compound interest doing what compound interest does. But wait, you're saying, Rayhan, I need a car to get to work so I can make money. I can't just not have a car. And you're right. For most people, a car is necessary. But here's the thing. There's a massive difference between having a car and having a $35,000 new car that you finance for 6 years. Let me tell you what a financially intelligent person does. They buy a 3 to 5-year-old Honda Accord or Toyota Camry for $18,000. They pay cash, or they finance it for 3 years maximum if they absolutely have to, but they prioritize paying it off fast. Now, let's run those numbers. $18,000 purchase price paid in cash, no monthly payment. Insurance, you're going to pay less because the car is worth less, and you can potentially skip comprehensive coverage if you have an emergency fund. Let's say $1,400 instead of $2,150. Same 13,500 miles, same fuel economy. $1,575. Okay, here's where people think it gets expensive. Older cars cost more to maintain. Except not really. Consumer Reports has consistently shown that the most reliable used cars, Hondas, Toyotas, cost about the same to maintain as new ones for the first several years of ownership. Let's budget $1,500 per year to be safe, slightly more than the new car. Registration, $100, less because the car is worth less in states with value-based registration. Depreciation, here's where it gets beautiful. A 3 to 5-year-old car has already taken its biggest depreciation hit. If you buy a 3-year-old Accord for $18,000 and keep it for 6 years, it might be worth $8,000 when you sell it. You've lost $10,000 over 6 years, or about $1,667 per year. Total yearly cost, $1,400 plus $1,575 plus $1,500 plus $100 plus $1,667 equals $6,242 per year. Compare that to $14,637 for the new car. You're saving $8,395 per year. Over 6 years, that's $50,370 you get to keep. This is what I mean when I say that normal is keeping you broke. Everyone finances new cars. Everyone has a $500 to $600 car payment. Everyone says it's just what it costs to have reliable transportation. And everyone is working until they're 70 because they can't retire. Do you see the connection? The average American has $141,000 saved for retirement, according to Northwestern Mutual. The median is way lower, something like $35,000. People in their 60s are panicking because they don't have enough money saved. And yet, this same average American spent probably $300,000 on cars over their working lifetime. Money that could have been invested. Money that could have been working for them instead of sitting in depreciating metal in their driveway. Look, I'm not saying you should never enjoy anything or that you should drive a beater car your entire life to save every penny. But I am saying that you need to understand the real cost of your decisions. When you choose to buy a $35,000 new car instead of an $18,000 used car, you're not just choosing to spend an extra $17,000 up front. You're choosing to spend an extra $50,000 over 6 years. And if you invest that $50,000 and let it grow for 30 years, it becomes $873,000. That's one car decision, one time in your life where you chose the normal option instead of the financially smart option, and it cost you nearly $1 million in retirement wealth. Now, you might be thinking, okay, Rayhan, but what about safety? What about reliability? I don't want to buy some old car that's going to break down on me. Fair question. Here's the reality. A 3-year-old Honda Accord with 36,000 miles on it is just as safe and reliable as a new Honda Accord. The safety technology hasn't changed that dramatically. The reliability is identical. We're talking about a car that's barely broken in. What has changed is the price. That depreciation you avoided, that's pure savings. But what about warranty? Most new car warranties are 3 years, 36,000 miles for bumper-to-bumper coverage. Powertrain might be longer, but the expensive stuff, electronics, interior, all the things that actually break, is usually 3 years. So when you buy a 3-year-old car, yeah, you don't have that warranty, but you know what you do have? An extra $17,000 in your bank account. That's your warranty. That's your emergency fund. If something breaks, you pay for it out of the money you saved, and you still come out way ahead. And here's the thing that people don't want to admit. New cars break too. I've known plenty of people with brand new cars who've had transmission issues, electrical problems, all sorts of stuff. The warranty covers it, sure, but you still have to deal with the hassle. You're still without your car for days or weeks, and you're still paying $600 a month for something that doesn't work. The action plan. So here's what you do if you're currently trapped in this cycle. If you currently have a car payment, first, you need to get honest about whether you can afford this car. Pull up your budget, and if you don't have a budget, that's step 0, make a budget, and look at your total car costs. Payment, insurance, gas, maintenance, everything. If it's more than 15% of your gross income, you can't afford the car. I don't care if you're making the payments, you're stealing from your future self. Your options are sell the car, even if you're underwater on the loan. Yeah, you might have to take out a small personal loan to cover the difference, but you'll still save money long term. Use the money you were spending on the car payment to aggressively pay off that small loan, then start saving cash for a reasonable used car. If you're planning to buy a car soon, do not, I repeat, do not buy new unless you're wealthy enough that it literally doesn't matter. And if you're watching YouTube videos about car costs, you're not wealthy enough that it doesn't matter. Save up cash. I know it's hard. I know it takes discipline, but save up $10,000 to $20,000 and buy a reliable used car outright. Honda, Toyota, Mazda, 3 to 5 years old. Get a pre-purchase inspection from an independent mechanic for $150. Join the car's online forum and search for common problems with that model year. Buy smart, pay cash, and you'll immediately be ahead of 90% of people your age. If you don't have a car payment, congratulations, you're already doing better than most. Now, here's the key. Whatever you would be spending on a car payment, invest that money. If everyone else is spending $600 on a car payment and you're not, that's $600 you can put into a Roth IRA or index funds. Do that for 30 years at 10% returns, and you'll have $1.36 million from just not having a car payment, from making one smart decision that everyone around you thinks is weird. Here's what I want you to understand. This isn't really about cars. Cars are just the easiest example because it's such a massive expense that people have completely normalized. This is about questioning every financial decision that society tells you is normal. Student loans are normal. Credit card debt is normal. Having a mortgage that's 40% of your income is normal. Financing furniture is normal. Leasing a car is normal. And you know what else is normal? Being broke, being stressed about money, not being able to retire, working a job you hate because you can't afford to quit. That's what normal gets you. The people who build wealth, the people who retire early, the people who have financial freedom, they're not doing normal. They're making decisions that their peers think are weird or cheap or overly cautious. They're driving older cars. They're house sitting or living in smaller houses. They're bringing lunch to work. They're investing the difference. And 20 years later, everyone else is wondering how they got so lucky. It wasn't luck, it was math. It was understanding the true cost of their decisions and choosing differently. Let me bring this home with one last comparison. Person A buys a new $35,000 car every 6 years for their entire working life, from age 25 to 65. That's 7 cars, at an average true cost of $14,637 per year. They spend $585,480 on cars over their lifetime. Person B buys a used $18,000 car every 6 years for their entire working life. Same time frame, same number of cars. At an average true cost of $6,242 per year, they spend $249,680 on cars over their lifetime. The difference? $335,800. But here's where it gets really interesting. Person B invests their yearly savings of $8,395. After 40 years at 10% returns, they have $4.3 million. Person A has a garage full of old cars they eventually sold for pennies on the dollar. Person B has generational wealth.
Same job, same income, just one different decision, made consistently over time. Look, I know this video probably made you uncomfortable. If you currently have a car payment, you might be feeling defensive right now. That's normal. Nobody likes being told they made a bad financial decision. But here's the thing. You can't change the past. You can only change what you do next. If you learned something from this video, if this changed how you think about car ownership, hit that like button. Subscribe if you want more content about the hidden costs that are keeping you broke and what to do about them. And most importantly, the next time you're tempted to buy a new car because everyone does it, or because you deserve it, or because it's just a car payment, I want you to remember this video. I want you to remember that $14,637 per year. I want you to remember what that money could become if you invested it instead. Your future self will thank you. I'm Rehan, and I'll see you in the next one.